So today's session is going to be about breaking the myths surrounding around autism, and also to understand how is it as teachers that we can help children with special needs, especially autism in the early pre-primary years, because we often see children at a very young age who come into a pre-primary classroom. We do understand that it becomes very challenging for a teacher to handle children with special needs, but that's where the teacher can actually bring about a change and make a difference in the life of that child. So let me begin with introducing our panelists. We have we will start with yes, we have Shobha Srivastava, who is the I'm sorry, I'm in spite of saying that please mute your audio. I don't know how some of y'all are able to unmute it. So yes, so we have Shobha Srivastava, who is actually first a parent of an adult with autism, and she's also the trustee member of SOPAN and an educator, special educator at Samarpan. Shobha, if you could introduce about uh, what you do, I will just unmute you right now so that you could talk about your experience as a mother, as an educator, and as a trustee.
Thank you, Rati. Hi, nice to see all of you. Am I audible?
Absolutely. Yes.
So, and being a parent came with its challenges initially, which were difficult. Went through my stages of denial and then moved on to acceptance and empowerment, and finally being able to pass on that empowerment to other parents as well. Uh, 2002, I was one of the founder members of SOPAN, Society of Parents of Children with Autistic Disorders, and we started with Samarpan, which was our first project, which caters to children with autism. And from there, our growth has had no bounds. We've moved on to more projects which empower and train, educate not only children and adults with autism, but also others with developmental disabilities. And we moved from project to project, but our core has always been autism because our expertise lies there. And we've started training courses in that. We now run the PIER in autism, right? So it's been a wonderful journey. And I feel truly blessed to be a parent of such an individual who's brought the change in me and motivated me to give back to society whatever I've learned from it.
Great, great. Thank you so much for actually, throwing light upon your different roles, and right from being a parent to a trustee to an educator. So thank you so much. We are going to get back to you with questions. So we move over to our second panelist, who is Dr. Mihir. I'm going to unmute you. So Dr. Mihir is a founder director of Urja Counseling and Remedial Center. So, Dr. Mihir, if you could briefly introduce yourself to our audience about the kind of work that you do and also your interaction with parents.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Child psychologist and a special educator. Am I audible?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I am a child psychologist and a special educator. Urja is an institute where we have children with different special needs, where we have children with intellectual disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, global developmental delays, and many others. Apart from this, I visit normal schools as a school counselor, and I train teachers about how to identify children with any kind of learning problems in the class, so that can help the teachers, and this message can pass on to the parents, because I believe teachers are the first point of contact.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what about your experience with teachers when you go to counsel, when you go to different schools? Do you see teachers being apprehensive or anxious about helping students with special needs?
All right. So when in the schools, usually when there are children. to identify that whether the child has any kind of learning problems or behavior problems. When the child starts, showing any kind of learning problems, then they identify that there is some kind of learning difficulty in the child. But when it comes to behavior, especially when we talk about children with autism, usually the child is understood as a child who is very shy, who doesn't talk much, who doesn't give good eye contacts to the teachers, and therefore they usually either the child is ignored if the teachers do not know how to deal with them, or the child suffers a lot where the teachers keeps on probing the child, thinking that some or the other technique or way can help the child to reciprocate, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. So ideally I see that lack of awareness in the teachers makes the teaching makes teaching special kids more difficult and frustrating for teachers.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, very true, very true. So we're going to come back to you with some certain set of questions that we have listed down for you. So we move over to our third panelist, Zai. I can't see her. Zai, can you hear me? Are you around? I'm not able to see you, Zai.
Hi.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now I can see you. Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Zai. So,
Hello.
Zai is an occupational therapist and she handles children with various difficulties and special needs. So, Zai, if you could briefly explain about your role as an occupational therapist, what exactly do we mean by an occupational therapist, and why should we go to an occupational therapist?
अभी ये म्यूट किया तो ऐसा हो गया. So hi everyone, this is Zai Joshi. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm working with pediatric setup. So presently I'm working with little.
Just hold on, Zai. Just hold on 1 second. I'll just mute all.
Wow.
Yes, Zai, you can go on. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So this is Zai. I'm an occupational therapist and I'm working with pediatric setup. So presently I'm working in Little Steps Rehabilitation Center that is in Villeparle, Prestigious Medical College. And I'm working in this field for past 7 years. So in our clinic, we get a lot of kids with ASD, ADHD, then learning disabilities, a lot of sensory processing disorders. So as an occupational therapist, most of people don't know what occupational therapy is. So we help people to interact with environment through daily activities to gain independence in their daily activities, maybe from brushing to go back to the bed at night. So to help them develop socially, emotionally, and physically, we help a person with disability with as a OT, we work as a part of a team that includes parents, teachers, and all other professions as well. There are speech-based special educators as well. So we set specific goals for each child. So and the goal often involves social interaction, then behavior management, classroom performances, and sensory regulation. So along with occupational therapy, we have one more therapy that is called sensory integration, which is like a neurological process, but that helps in processing the sensory information which we get from our environment and from our body, and to integrate it from the body so that it helps us with the emotional regulation, then learning, then behavior, and our activities of daily living. So this way, a child with ASD need OT as well as sensory integration therapy to self-regulate themselves, to get them calm down
Yeah.
and soothe
So
them.
I'm gonna come back to you with regards to question about sensory regulation and the need for sensory regulation. So I'm gonna come back to you with a set of questions regarding the same. So I would like to take our first questions. There are around 10 questions which I'm gonna be asking all our panelists, and after those 10 questions are done, we're gonna be throwing it open to our audience to ask any questions that they would like to ask. So my first question is to Shobha. Shobha, if you could help us know the basic, what is meant by autism? we are talking about autism, we are talking about kind of awareness about autism, but let us first understand what is actually meant by autism. First, let us tackle that.
Okay. Autism, of course, is a neurological disorder, right, which is caused in the developmental years of a child, which means by the time the child is 3 years old, you see signs of autism. Now, what are the signs? There are three major impairments with children with autism. One is they have deficit in language and communication, they have a deficit in social issues, and lastly, they have repetitive behavior, right? These are the triad of impairments. In addition to that, they have huge sensory issues, which is why an occupational therapy is most important for intervention of these children, right?
I would
Many of them have.
request you to go a little slow because the voice is not very clear.
Okay. Should I repeat or just carry on from there?
If you could repeat, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Autism is a neurological disorder, yeah, which occurs, is typically seen in the first 3 years of any child, right? It happens in the developmental stages. The child is probably born with autism, but maybe the signs are clear, absolutely clear by the time the child is 3 years old. It is a developmental disorder. So as the child is developing, we can see that the signs are coming now, right? And there are three main deficits for children with autism. The main one being language and communication. They have a lot of inability to communicate appropriately. It's not that they don't have language, but the ability to communicate is not there. Secondly, they have a lot of social issues. In a huge group of people, they would have issues with socializing with people, talking to people, having eye contact, really mingling with them, right?
પાછળ નીચે ઓલું ડોટ છે ને
And
ડોટ ઉપર ઓલું
And thirdly, the last one, they have a lot of repetitive behaviors.
Hmm.
Behaviors could be physical in nature. They could also be limited interest for the ones who have very high intelligence quotient, or it could be just interested in very few people or very few activities or routine activities. So these are the three main deficits which they have, right? As far as IQ is concerned, intelligence quotient, many of them have absolutely normal intelligence quotient. But because of their sensory issues and the processing disorder which they have, which is inherent to their disorder, they find it difficult to learn, and therefore, input and output is an issue. Which is why many of them seem to have lower IQ than they actually have. And many of them have fantastic savant abilities. One ability that picks them out of the ordinary and places them in, a really fantastic sphere. Some may have a good musical ability. Some may have good ability in mathematics. Some may be so good in something that it just lifts them out of, it makes them a shining star.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you clarified that children with autism do have an IQ which even goes beyond average. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And also, what happens is, when we see parents coming in, when probably after the age of 3 is when parents start understanding, when they go to the pediatrician and they start understanding that okay, there are some developmental delays, and then they kind of come to maybe your center to understand what is it that they can do. So how is it that the parent understands that the child has autism, or what is there a test that we need to do at an early age? So how do you identify, how is it that the parent can actually understand, or the teacher can understand that okay, this child may be having symptoms?
The first stop, of course, is to a doctor, because most parents find something odd with their child, and this may be brought to their notice either by a teacher or by the mother themselves or parents themselves, or could be somebody else who may come up and say that there is an issue. So when they go to a medical doctor, the doctor may just immediately refer them to a center like ours and say, please get the detailed assessment done. So when the child comes to us, we send the child first to a psychologist who does an intensive testing, which includes IQ testing, of course, which is done by a series of tests. And once the IQ test is done, then we look at autism specific tests. Yeah, it could be CARS, GARS, there are a variety of tests which are available. And the testing is done, and also the level of autism is obtained. Because children who require very little support may not require a special setting at all. In fact, today, I mean, the need of the hour is to just keep them in inclusive settings and not move them to special settings. but the level of support required for the child according to DSM-5 is important to identify. So the psychologist takes at least 3 to 4 sessions, or maximum 7 sessions, to identify all the problems, identify the level of autism, and then we do an additional testing by an occupational therapist to find out if there are any issues, what are the sensory modalities issues that the child is facing. A speech therapist also comes in and looks at what are the language delays which are there in the. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Am I back again? Yeah. So we also look at a lot of an occupational therapist also does a test also to find out what could be the sensory issues and how better can we improve the child's issues. Then physiotherapist, if required, mostly these children don't have any physical problems, so therefore a physiotherapist may not be required. And a special educator kicks in at the last moment to find out what is the best learning for such children. How best do they learn? So we have this huge multidisciplinary team, which after the psychologist puts in their tests together, and then they come up with what is called a recommendation plan if the child is not joining the center, or an individual education plan or family service plan as a may be based on the child. Yeah. So that is the protocol we follow.
Great, great. Thank you so much for throwing light on the protocols that are followed and how is it that the parent can actually identify. You also mentioned in your talk something about DSM-5. Of course, when I was doing my masters, it was DSM-4, but now it's DSM-5. So if you could let our audience know what is meant by DSM-5.
Diagnostic Statistics Manual, version number 5, which is now the one which is used, broadly to find out the level of autism. Earlier, autism was further divided into more categories, like there is Rett syndrome, there is Asperger's syndrome, still there. There were 3-4 categories like childhood disintegrative disorder. All those things are now clubbed together as autism broadly, and everything comes under autism. And we are now looking at autism as 3 levels. One, a child with autism who requires minimum support, moderate support, and very high level of support. So depending on the level of support, we decide on what should be the placement of the child. If the child requires very high support but is very young, can definitely manage in a mainstream school. But if the child is a little older, maybe middle school years, and requires a high level of support, then maybe one should look at special setup.
Special
Like I
setup.
said, each case is unique and individual, and each case we pick up and we decide what to be done.
Yes,
And we
absolutely.
recommend that to the parents. It's not our decision, but it's a recommendation to the parents.
Absolutely. Each case, each child with autism is so different.
It's unique.
Because I remember when I was teaching children with autism, each style for every child, the style of teaching was so different. Like the IEPs would differ, even though the age is the same, but their IEPs would differ significantly. So thank you, Shobha, for throwing light on that. My next question is to Zai. Zai, what now that we know the protocols about how the child is diagnosed and how the child comes to a center depending on the severity level, now what you did describe the role of an occupational therapist. What is the role that the occupational therapist plays? I'll just mute everybody. Yes, so you did describe about the role that an occupational therapist plays in special education. But right now, my question to you is about when a child with autism comes to you, diagnosed with autism, what is the kind of sensory profile that you'll suggest, or how do you all begin your assessment to find out what therapy that would be given to the child? I mean, I understand every child with autism is different and has a different sensory profile, but what are the
Yes.
steps that, as an occupational therapist, you all follow to help the parent or the teacher understand that, okay, these are the activities where we need to focus upon for the entire year, and with the parents and the teachers' help, the child will be able to achieve much more rather than just the therapist working on the child. Yeah.
Okay. So as Shobha ma'am also said, the same, that we work in a team. We set goals according to the need of the child. As I mentioned, we assess the child on a sensory profile, so that we get to know whether, as all of you must be knowing that we have five senses. So other than those five senses, there are two more senses, that is called vestibular sense and the proprioceptive sense.
Yeah,
Both of these
vestibular and
senses,
proprioceptive. So I'll just type
yes,
that out over here. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, you can go on. Yeah.
So both these senses, they help us to balance our body, the coordination, then our body and environment. Hello,
Yes,
can
we
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. Yes, yes.
Okay. So based on the sensory profile, we get to know where the child is lacking, or where what are the child's sensory needs, whether the child is vestibular seeker or the child is vestibular avoider. I can give you examples. If like the child is not liking swing activities much, or he can spin his body a lot, then a child likes to push the furniture or to push others. He just bangs onto the others. And if the child is child loves to hug others, or the child doesn't like to take a hair wash, he doesn't like to go for a haircut, he doesn't like to take bath. So these are some of the sensory issues that the child with ASD can show. Other than that, there are oromotor sensory issues also, like the child doesn't like to brush his teeth, or the child cannot use his tongue effectively, which helps with the speech part as well. So, along with this evaluation of sensory profile, we do other evaluations as well, like physical skills, our gross motor skills, jumping, then balancing, coordination, acting, then fine motor skills, which are required for handwriting, then visual skills, visual perception skills, which are helpful for the reading and writing skills in the school, or any behavior issues that the child has, or uh, his play skills also. As an occupational therapist, we help them being independent in their daily activities and occupation. So as a child, his occupation is play. So to make him independent in the play activities, like pretend play activities, like
Social skills.
what we need, yeah, social skills we need, or we need communication, we need group activities, group play we need. So to interact with the group and to be in the group effectively, so we need that skills as well. So we basically assess them on these skills, and accordingly we set a protocol or a home program for the child.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great to know that. So, after like all these activities are actually taken care by an occupational therapist independently or with in consultation with the parent and the teacher.
Of course, with the as I told you, it's a teamwork. So
Teamwork.
as an occupational therapist, it's my job to explain this entire protocol to the parent. Also, if the child is facing any issues in the school, we uh, we directly communicate with the teachers also, what are problems the child is facing in the school, or the teacher is facing to deal with the child, so
Okay.
we can help them accordingly.
Yes, great. Thank you. Thank you, Zai, for answering that question. So my next question is to Dr. Mihir. So, being a head of the remedial center, and you might be uh, counseling various parents. So my question to you would be, how do you deal with the challenge of when it comes to counseling parents about acceptance? How do you tackle that? Because we've seen a lot of resistance. For parents it's really really hard to actually accept that the child has a condition which is going to require therapy and special needs, and maybe the child cannot attend a a regular school. So how difficult, or how How is it that your team is tackling that? Any tips on that, rather?
Okay, I would like to begin with, extending to what Shobha said about the age, which she rightly said, it is diagnosed between the age of 2 to 3 years. Now, at times, what happens, especially in a setup like India, where people stay more in a joint family. So when there are some kind of speech delays or developmental delays, the parent is actually asked to, wait and not consult any specialist, because in our setup it is usually said कि थोड़ा time के बाद वो ठीक हो जाएगा.
Yes.
So that is the first thing that happens when the parents come to us. After that, we also spoke about DSM-5. Now, when we are talking about diagnosing autism, so DSM-5 also comes up with some different things, where something they mention about social communication disorder, जहाँ पर बच्चे का speech काफी late आता है, they have difficulties in communication, etc., etc. So initially, if those symptoms were present, so हम लोग बोलते थे that even this is autism, right? So first of all, we also have to understand that whether it is autism or it is social communication disorder. Okay, then there is something which is called as sensory processing disorder, कि बच्चे को कुछ sensory issues है, therefore the child is showing that kind of symptoms. So we, first of all, based on the symptoms, we classify what kind of condition the child is suffering from, whether it is pure autism with these problems, or social communication disorder. Now, based on that, we send the parents for testing, because when it comes to developmental delays, also first of all the child has to go for hearing testing.
Okay.
Yes, then the
Why is
child
that
has to
so?
go for speech therapy.
Why is that so? Why hearing
Because
testing?
usually I'm sorry.
Why the ear test?
Yeah, because usually children with autism do not respond like, especially to their name calling.
Okay.
So when
Okay.
the child is just sitting and the mother is calling from outside, the child is self lost, जिसको हिंदी में बोलेंगे स्वमग्न. They are just lost in their own world, one of the characteristic. And therefore the child wouldn't respond, so the mother would feel कि मेरे child को सुनने में कुछ problem है. So then doctor would advise to do a hearing test. Now all these tests, when they come out to be normal, then there is a DQ done, which is a developmental quotient test. Okay. So from that also we get to know that how the development of the child is going, in case if the parent doesn't go a pediatrician. Because usually in our Indian setup, we stop going to a pediatrician when the child is, 2 years old. Uske baad we consult our regular general physician in most of the setups I'm talking about. Now, when these parents come to us, so the parents actually know that, the presenting thing is, मेरे बच्चे को कोई problem नहीं है, लेकिन वो बोलता नहीं है. Yes. So from here we start. कि बोलता क्यों नहीं है? What is the reason? Then we understand that what kind of a setup the child is coming from. Joint family hai, nuclear family hai, how is the overall environment? And from there on, we actually start counseling the parents.
Okay.
Right. So when so the first question which I come across in the Indian parents is कि मेरा बच्चा ठीक तो हो जाएगा ना?
I was just coming to that.
So this is again I would like to address one of the myth. That autism is a curable condition. Unfortunately, there are certain quacks in the market who promises all this कि आप मेरी ये दवाई करो, आप मेरा ये therapy करो तो बच्चा ठीक हो जाएगा. And in that process, when the parent comes to us, they have actually wasted a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
And then, so then they are more concerned about कि बच्चा कितना पढ़ाई करेगा, मेरा बच्चा 10वीं तो पूरा करेगा कि नहीं. See, these are very genuine questions which any parent would ask. But first of all, we counsel the parents more on make the child to express. So the child has to pick up on the speech. The child should be able to communicate in any way, because somewhere if these basic skills are developed, then those are all cognitive academic skills which will come in later with right kind of intervention.
Right. Great.
Yeah. So in the counseling,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And even when it comes to schooling, so we request the parents to wait for a while, because at times the child is very hyper. Okay, the child is quite restless. The child may show symptoms of ADHD where it is masking autism. So we first say that you first go and see an occupational therapist. आप पहले उसका therapy कराओ. Let the child settle down. Let those symptoms come proper in place, and then we can say that the child has autism spectrum. Before that, we can't label. One. Number two. After the child turns 6 to 7, when we see some kind of an academic history of the child, where the child is not picking up, the child is academically quite poor, the child is needing the help of a shadow teacher, the child is not settling in the class, then it's a gradual process for the parents to accept. It's not easy. And in that process, the parents themselves need to be educated a lot. They have to read, have to visit specialists, they have to watch, be a part of these kind of forums to understand that what is the child concern and whether they are going on the right track. Because it should not happen that by the time the child turns 14 and the parent has wasted a lot of time in the basic formative years.
Yeah. So my question now to you is that let's say I'm a teacher in a regular setup classroom, and I identify a child who probably seems to be on the spectrum. Now the parents probably aren't aware, or maybe they are aware, but there's denial. Now as a teacher, how do I get this across to the parent on the other side that okay, your child seems to be having some kind of special need, and maybe you should go to your pediatrician, show to your pediatrician, because this conversation of a teacher with a parent is something where we all struggle. The first initial conversation where we actually want to convey our regards, or we want to convey that okay, I'm able to identify certain needs. So how do we go across with the parent? How do we break this barrier of this conversation? Because this is where the majority of the struggle lies of teachers in regular setups. Yeah.
I believe first of all, the teacher should equip herself well in terms of knowing about the condition. Once the teacher is well aware about it, it is necessary to have a good rapport with the parent. Teachers should usually avoid repeating the complaints to the parents. She should not create an environment where the parent stops coming to attend the open house, right? At the same time, say in case if the child is in junior KG, so when the child goes to senior KG, the junior KG teacher should actually brief the senior KG teacher about the child's condition. And gradually every year, repeatedly, when the parent is hearing some or the other complaint. Now see, even the parents will know that my child is not growing like the other children. So when the teachers are constantly in junior KG, one teacher is saying, in senior KG, one teacher is saying, then when the child comes in grade 1 and the academic challenges keep on rising, the other complaints also keep on rising. At that time, in every meeting, the teacher or the principal can actually tell the parent that it is no harm that we can see a school counselor. Yeah, in case if there is no school counselor, then there is no harm seeing a doctor to understand, so we can help better, and your child's struggle will be much more easier. So I think the way she puts across is very important.
Yeah, that's what, the way it is put across to the parent is very important, because as we all know that it's really hard for a parent to accept that yes, my child has a problem, and that I'm going to go as per what you have told me, and I'm going to go ahead and show to the doctor. So this is where majority of the cases are actually not really reported, or early intervention is not possible because of the denial. So yeah, so I think the one very important point that you brought about was that the teacher should avoid repeated complaints about the child. So
Yes.
that otherwise the parent becomes defensive, and when actually we sit on the table to do the talk, it falls on deaf ears. So that is what I have typed out in my comments. So let's avoid repeated complaints, and rather let's look out for why those behaviors are arising, the cause of the behavior. Let's look out for the cause of the behavior. Right. So with this, I have my next question to Shobha. So thank you, Dr. Mihir. I'm going to get back to you. So Shobha, being a parent, of a child with autism, how has your journey been when it comes to tackling behavioral issues, or when it comes to inclusion? Do you see our society as an inclusive society? And do you feel that people around are sensitive and empathetic, or what has been your experience as a parent?
Today's day and age, inclusion is a fantastic word, and I think we may not be practicing to exactly the level we wish to, but that is always the perfect, case which is not possible anywhere in the world. But inclusion has come a long way in India. In 2002, when we started Samarpan, I remember children with autism would not get admission anywhere, whether it's a special school, mainstream, of course, not at all, but anywhere. So they had no school to go to do anything. So that time to empower and educate parents in the community was a huge, huge responsibility that Rupan took on a lot, like other institutes also. So an aware community, of course, leads to an inclusive community. But since 2002, it has been, we have moved slowly, but we have moved quite a bit. Today, now with the Right to Education Act 2016, children with autism are actually supposed to be managed in mainstream education schools as far as possible. Unless the child is not learning at all and the child requires a special setup, a child with autism can definitely continue in a mainstream education school. As far as other aspects regarding social aspects, there are always issues with behaviors. I mean, I will tell you my own personal, and the behaviors come up, the attitudes come up from people because of behaviors. My own personal experience has been that when my son was younger, I tried to travel by flight, and it was extremely difficult. There was nobody who could even understand his case, and people were irritated. They wouldn't give a special person to come with me to go towards the aircraft. All issues were there. I was very pleasantly surprised when in 2015 I traveled alone with him. As you all know that now security insists that, ladies go separate, males go separate. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that there's now a special desk. And when you go across and you say that, look, I have a young adult who I can't take through in the ladies section, they immediately came up with attendants, took my son through and saw him right to the other end, right?
Wow.
Today, when we have go to malls also, we see all these beautiful changes which have come through to ensure that inclusion happens. Today, people do look at your child strangely, but they don't react. They may come to you in a sympathetic manner. Okay, I would prefer empathy, but many do it out of sympathy. But at least they come up and they find out that can I help you with anything wrong. They don't look down and say, "Oh my God, what a badly behaved child." I think that itself speaks volumes to the way we have progressed.
Awareness, about the awareness. Yeah.
Yes.
That's lovely. And what about tackling behavioral issues? So how has it been for you to be able to understand a child with autism, and now of course a young adult? So what has been your journey like tackling the behavioral, and also when it comes to diet, how have you taken care that the diet also corresponds to the behavioral management?
Yes. Behaviors always come, there is always an underlying reason for the behavior. Like somebody mentioned it earlier, it does not just come up because the child wants to behave badly. There is an underlying reason. It could be occult pain. It could be the child is unable to communicate something. It could be something very strongly need-based, like a pain in the abdomen, and it's because of lack of body mapping, the child is unable to point where the pain is coming from. Could be the child is constipated, is unable to pass motions. I mean, I can come up with many examples, but there is always the reason for the behavior. So I, in my experience, first and foremost, try and find out the reason. The ABC of all, find the antecedent, find out the behavior, and look at the consequences. So first thing is to identify what the behavior is and try and change that, right? Some behaviors, of course, are learned, they are learned behaviors. They are attention-seeking behaviors, which are the most difficult to contain. They want your attention, they want something, and then there is a temper tantrum which happens even with normal, so-called normal children, right?
Yeah.
So that, of course, requires a bit of, removal of the negative behaviors, things like that. But typically, always try to find out what is the trigger. Why is the child behaving that way? Because after all, the child is also a human being, and there has to be a reason for every bad behavior. So in my experience, I've always been a step ahead of my son and tried to ensure what is the problem and moved on. Diet plays a huge role in all our behaviors, I feel, right? In all our behaviors. And particularly with children with autism, where the gut is extremely sensitive, they have poor digestive issues, they have huge gastrointestinal problems and allergies, right?
Hmm.
So if a diet, it could be a GFCF diet, or in the case of a child with autism and epilepsy, a ketogenic diet really works wonders, right? But of course, in some cases, a diet may not work at all. So I would always say that try the diet out for probably 2 to 3 weeks. If you see a difference, then you carry on with the diet. If you don't see an iota of difference, then please drop the diet and try something else. Yeah. But diet plays a big role in all our lives. Yeah.
True.
You cannot
Very true.
deprive a child. The child has to be happy at the end of the day and motivated. But diet does play an important.
True, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we cannot deprive, but it does play an important role in the behavioral management of the child as well. Yes, and as you just mentioned that the gut is very weak, and they are also with many allergens, food allergens. So yeah, so we need to have that kind of diet accordingly, which is suitable to the child to be able to help out in behavioral management as well. So yes, thank you, Shobha, and over to Zai. When it comes to, now that we have addressed the questions of how parents are to accept, when it comes to parents accepting the condition, and also when it comes to managing a child or an adult with autism, and then moving on to how we are seeing our society getting inclusive. So Zai, how about schools? Do you see a difference when children come to you for therapy sessions? So do you see a difference where over there, do you see schools adapting and bringing about changes in their environment to suit children with special needs?
Yes, I have not worked with schools particularly, but yes, kids who are coming to us for the therapy, we see the schools are being more proactive. uh, Schools teachers are coming to us, they are contacting us, they are contacting parents as well, that whatever the problems they are facing in the school, like the parents come to us, they tell us, so accordingly we can contact the teachers and we can help them.
Okay, but what about adaptations? What are the kind of adaptations that a teacher can bring about in her classroom, in his or her classroom?
Okay. So, what we suggest them is to, if it is possible, to make the child sit in front of the board, or a little close to the board or the teacher, so that teacher can pay one-on-one attention, if possible. Then we suggest them to give them some time out, as these kids, they need some me time for themselves, to self regulate themselves, to soothe, to calm them down. So we ask them to give some time out for like 5 to 10 minutes or so, or we suggest them to give some physical activities which are like little exhausting for them, and every after 30 minutes or 1 hour or so that they can concentrate better. And the if the child is little auditory hypersensitive, we can ask them to provide earplugs, so that the child will feel better. And if we can exempt them from any group activity, the child is not ready to be a part of a group activity, so the school is ready to keep the child little away, or away from the
Maybe
group
give them some other
activities.
activity at that point of time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But now that you all are dealing with so many children, do you see a rise in the number of cases of children with autism or special needs?
Yes, definitely. Actually, the thing is, parents and even teachers, they are getting more aware of what the red flags, what we call,
Yeah, red
are,
flags.
and they tend to address things little faster. So
Okay.
because of that, we see that, yeah. So
The early intervention cases are more. The early intervention
yes,
cases are more. Yeah. You're able to hear me? Hello.
yeah.
Yeah. So so it is now that the teachers are able to identify the red
Yes.
flags and report. So is it because of the awareness that the cases are reported are more, or is it because of the fear that, okay, before the child turns 6, let us just report the red flags to the parent and bring them to the OTIS to kind of address those red flags? What is it? What do you all feel?
I feel it is awareness.
Awareness.
Yeah, that is happening.
So is it good awareness or is it anxiety? So just kind of understanding, the kind of observation that you all have made in the past few years.
Uh,
So when parents come to you all, is it anxiety or is it awareness? Or both?
It's both.
that's what it's both.
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 Because
Yeah.
parents come to us. I think उसको autism है. मतलब they feel like it's like उसको malaria है. पर मतलब yes, it's both anxiety and the awareness, because we have lot of information about autism that is available on Google, like awareness.
It's awareness. Yeah. Great. Thank you. That's what I just wanted to understand your observation about that. So, coming back to Dr. Mihir, I can't see him. Dr. Mihir, my question to you was about, what are the kind of activities? Of course, before that, we also know that the autism is basically something which is best diagnosed before the age of 5 years, but we also see something called as regression. So if you could throw some light on that. I'm not able to spot you to unmute you. I don't know.
He can unmute himself, I think. He can unmute himself. I can see him, but I can't unmute.
Okay.
He can unmute himself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Okay. So regression is opposite of progression. Progress karna or regress karna. So when we are talking about regression, children with autism usually regress in terms of, say, for example, speech. So if the child has acquired some good speech, some good words, and all of a sudden the child regresses and the child starts babbling. So that is one example. The other is, we also asked during the case history session, कि ऐसा कुछ हुआ where the child was independently able to handle his own toilet needs, and then automatically he started again peeing in his pants or soiling the clothes. So हम लोग ये भी देखते हैं that whether the child has regressed in those particular needs or not. So speech and toilet needs are something that we look at when we are talking about regression. Even behavior, where the child has to behave in terms of as he's growing with his age, but the child would actually display a lot of age inappropriate behaviors, and where the child would behave more childlike. So these are also certain things that we talk in regression. Yeah.
Great. Yes, and my question to you is what I asked Zai about the observation, that do you see a rise in the number of cases with autism? And if yes, then is it because of awareness, or is it just that parents are very anxious to kind of report the red flags?
I feel in my day-to-day practice, and even being a school counselor, I meet so many parents every day. So at times I feel definitely awareness is one of the reasons, but the other reason is also anxiety. For small things, parents need to clarify that whether they are going in a right way, whether the child has any kind of problem developed. Even for small things, just not for autism, but even for any kind of learning problems, concentration issues, especially when we're talking about the pre-primary children, where the parents are expecting that the attention span and all has to be for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So something I feel that somewhere the parents have become more anxious. Also, it could be attributed more to the lifestyle changes that at this particular juncture, we all need, as parents, we need a lot of counseling before we actually help the child, because we are actually not getting the right guidance as to what is right and therefore we start thinking that my child has a problem, my child has a problem.
Correct. Correct. Yes. And what are the kind of activities that you would suggest educators or parents to actually work with children with autism in the early stages of life, in the early intervention stages? What are the kind of activities, or what is the kind of focus that you'll usually suggest parents and educators to work upon?
Okay, as Zahi mentioned about the two important senses, the vestibular and the proprioception sense. At this early age, if a lot of physical activities where the child's vestibular sense is taken care of, a lot of garden activities, movement activities, fine motor skill activities, if the parents focus, a lot of floor activities where scanning, recognition, naming the task, identification, two-way interaction, all those things should be encouraged in these early years. So somewhere you actually get to know that whether the child is progressing nicely. In case if you don't feel, then that gives you a signal where you actually need to see a specialist.
So a lot of floor activities would help, a lot of motor vestibular
Yes,
activities.
motor skill activity. Yes, so gross motor and fine motor, which will actually take care of the vestibular and the proprioceptive at the same time. This would also increase the child's concentration, two-way interaction, and somewhere it will also help a lot of group play. So the social skills automatically starts building up.
Right.
So it's very necessary that an exposure should be even if there's a child with special needs, the child should be exposed in such a way where the parent shouldn't feel that I have a child with special needs. The child should interact with all the other children around. So that's how they learn what the society expects them to behave.
Great. So thank you for throwing light on this question about how parents are now even anxious to bring even the littlest of the littlest red flags that they notice to get it cleared and to understand in which direction they need to move. And
I also feel
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I also feel that parents actually should once in a month, or at least once in 3 months, they should actually go and see a counselor, go and seek any professional who can help them, give them some guidance, because dealing with children with special needs 24 hours is actually very difficult for parents, and in this process I feel parents become more negative. So if they also get a good outlet, it's very tough. So if they get a good outlet, they get some guidance, and somewhere how to manage their own emotions can actually help them to be good to be better parents, to handle children with special needs.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, thank you for bringing that as well. Shobha, would you like to share something on this regards?
You're talking about the counseling bit?
About the counseling bit, yes.
Counseling is a big part of of any clinic's activities, because implementation of an IEP of course is done along with the parents interaction and support, but hand in hand goes parent engagement, parent enrichment, as well as parent counseling and guidance, which we do continuously at least once in a week. We try and engage the parents. Counseling is number one. Counseling is to get over the negative feelings, like the doctor said, and it's important to get over negative feelings and try and accept and motivate yourself to work with your child, and make them understand that it's okay to take some time out for yourself. There is also something called me which time. If you step out and take some time for yourself, you will be better motivated to work with your child. Yes. So counseling and guidance is important, and I feel a huge range of topics also need to be covered. Number one, working with your child, you can also give tips on what to be done, whether it is occupational therapy, simple things to be done at home, whether it is special education, whether it is speech. There has to be a home program, because the child is there in the school only for a couple of hours or a few hours. It has to be carried out at home, and that will only come if there is a parent enrichment program where the parents are invited to participate and they're actually trained on how to do these simple jobs at home. And believe me, the moment they complete that and they start working with their child, you can see the huge change in attitude towards the parents. they'll come back and say, मेरे बच्चे ने ऐसे किया, क्या मजा आया, so then you can see the motivation building up from there. Right?
So how
that
you all
I think
dealing? How are you all dealing now with especially the COVID situation when schools are shut and not much therapy seems to be happening or teaching seems to be happening? So how is it now the home program that the parents are relying on?
Yes, it is unfortunate that this problem has come up now, right? Because nothing is happening right now. All we can do is call up the parents and support their needs on the phone. There's nothing much we can do. If any issues come up, then we try and counsel them at home, but it's not enough.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
real face-to-face and real, demonstration of what is to be done is what is really the need of the hour. I mean, there's very little, but we are trying our best. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm sure it might be really tough for the parents because 24/7 now they are with the child without any respite.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a tough situation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough. 24/7. But I still would say that this time will never come again. I feel it's a great time to bond with your child and make the best.
True, very true. Let's see the positive side of that as well. So with this, my questions come to an end, and I am allowing the audience now, whoever would like to ask a question, I can unmute them and they can ask their questions. So either you can ask in the chat or you can just raise your hand and let me know so that I can unmute you, and you can direct the questions either to Shobha, Zai, or Dr. Mihir. Yes. So there's someone who has asked a question in the chat. I'm handling an autism child. Me and my principal had a talk with the child's parents. We have advised them to do speech therapy and consult doctor, but parents are not taking initiative. We tried to convince them. So, sir, can you advise me how can I convince the parents? Yes, so I think this is directed to Dr. Mihir.
Sir.
Yeah, Rakhi,
yeah.
I want you to repeat the question because your voice was cracking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so there is someone who's asking that the principal and the teacher has identified a child with autism, and they have asked the parents to go for speech therapy and consult the doctor, but the parents are not taking any initiative. So how is it that they can tackle this?
Okay, so this particular question is from a teacher, right?
Yes, from a teacher. Yeah. So the teacher and the principal are trying to convince the parent to go and show the doctor and go for speech therapy, but the parent is not taking any initiative. So how can they convince the parents?
Yeah, see, again, I mentioned it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Maybe not this particular academic year. The child, the parent can understand the severity of this. I don't know what standard, I mean, the child is in which standard. But also, if the principal can put some pressure on the parents, see, because it is all for the children. Right? So if the principal can put some pressure on the parents that in case if we do not see a therapist diagnostic report and the speech therapist impression, we will not be able to help your child much in the classroom situation. Definitely, we are definitely going to help the child, but this is how you need to tell the parents, because that's how the parents will initiate the process. So some amount of pressure from the school will actually help, and the parents will go to the doctor to identify what is the problem.
True, true. Khushbu, would you like to ask the next question? Khushbu has a question. She's raised her hand. Yeah, Khushbu. I have put you on unmute. Yes, Khushbu, you can ask your question. Hello. Okay, so maybe we can come to the next question, which is put up in the chat room. Which board would you recommend for children with autism? And this question is meant for all our panelists. Which board would you recommend for children with autism, SSC or CBSE?
All the boards are difficult if you ask me. Yeah, so it basically depends on what is possible by the child. I would either say NIOS.
NIOS, yes.
I would say NIOS. And yeah, if necessary, but a regular SSC or an all boards are equally difficult today. Yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, Dr. Mihir.
Yeah, Dr. Mir. Which board would you recommend?
Yeah, and also knowing what is the child's IQ level, and especially when we see in children with autism that the memory is very good, but when it comes to logical thinking, the logical thinking is poor. So the board which which is more friendly in terms of memorizing, especially state board till grade 8, would actually help the child with autism, provided the child shouldn't feel the study so overwhelming. See, at times children are capable, but the pressure of studies actually gets in a lot of behavioral issues. So therefore, we recommend that the child should take up NIOS board, not because the child needs an NIOS board, but it is actually in terms of when the child has to select subjects every year. So it's a kind of a relief to the child, where at one go it's not necessary for him to pass all the subjects.
Yes.
Also,
So
he
it.
can
Yeah, Zai.
develop what is he good at. He gets time if he is in the first group. Like what are his positive things that he has other than this behavior and all. He can concentrate or the parent can encourage him to know what is he good at.
Yeah. What are they good at? Yeah, we need to understand what are they good at, right? The next question is to Shobha. If you could explain the difference between autism and sensory processing disorder. No, sorry. The question to Shobha is explain the ABC of the behavior, the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Yes.
Okay. Antecedent is something which happens before the behavior. The trigger is what we call it, right? For example, B is the behavior and C is the consequence of what you're going to do about the behavior. And antecedent, typically, I'm just giving you a very simple example, could be the sound of a mixer. Okay, most children have very sensitive auditory hearing issue. So when the mixer is put on, the child may have a behavior. It could be a temper tantrum, and the consequence, of course, is to take away the sound, right? So that's a very clear example of ABC. Now, this is a very clear and easy way to find out what the trigger is. In most cases, it's very difficult because many children have sensory issues. So whether it is the small smell which is creating the problem, whether it's a vestibular proprioceptive issue which we cannot really see or understand so easily, why the behavior has occurred is very difficult in most cases. So one needs to be, continuously keeping a recording sheet and find out when the behavior occurs and look at so that the antecedent behavior in one.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
Yes. Thank you for so simply putting it forward. What is the basic difference between autism and sensory processing disorder? Yeah, this is a good question. The difference between autism and sensory processing disorder. This is asked by Latika. Yeah.
Zai wants to answer it.
Yes, Zai would like to answer this. The difference between autism and sensory processing.
So basically, sensory processing disorder. These kids, they perceive information and they respond it abnormally. They are afraid of sudden, for example, they are afraid of sudden high pitch or loud noises, or they are avoiding physical contact. They have fear of being in a crowd, or they fear climbing or falling. So these kids, they can have behavior issues, but particularly in autism, ASD, they have social and communication issues, which is a major difference between
Absolutely.
ASD and
absolutely right.
Yeah. It's a very important, the difference. Yes, because many parents feel anxious and they jump to labeling. So I think this is something which is very, very important to understand the difference between autism and sensory processing. Thank you for bringing that. Yeah, please go on.
They can communicate their basic needs. They can ask for their basic needs. But for kids with ASD, they do feel challenging communication.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please, Shobha.
Can I just add just one line? just one line. In SPD, it is mainly a sensory processing disorder. But in autism, the other two, like she rightly said, social skills are also
And
prominent.
cognitive skills.
Language and communication, yeah, that all these are there, right? It may not be there at all with a child with SPD. Could be only SPD, but could be able to communicate well. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And what are the reasons for SPD?
Biological in nature, yeah, it is something that we don't understand. There is still no reason for why these disorders come up. It is still it's a puzzle still which we have to solve, but it may come up.
Okay. The next question is how to make other students aware of a particular child who has special needs, as if we are dealing with a child with special needs, other kids feel left out many times. So how do we address this? Dr. Mir, would you like to address this question?
We do this in schools where there are certain children or regular children who are aware that why certain kids are coming for counseling. But it is also necessary where during the mental health week that we carry out in schools, so we do a lot of awareness sessions with the children, and there's a lot of empathy building sessions, some sessions on bullying. So I think it's both the ways where at times children with special needs are also bullied. At the same time, the other children or the regular children would feel that we are not given that much of attention the way the children with special needs are getting. So therefore we also encourage a lot of buddy system in children, where a child with special needs is made to sit with a child who is very responsible, I would say smart in the class, and then he constantly keeps on helping the child, understands the challenges what the child with special needs is facing. The child is also applauded every day, or maybe by the class teacher, or at times you also call the child during the school annual day. We felicitate the child. So somehow the child feels that they are actually doing and helping children with special needs because they are little more capable as compared to children with special needs.
Yep. Yep. So thank you, Dr. Mir. There is educator who has asked Vijeta, NIOS board is very difficult to approach. How can we have information from this board in Mumbai? Intention is to set up NIOS board in a CBSE school to make more mainstreaming, more inclusive. Vijeta, she's a counseling psychologist. Yeah, so she wants to know about how NIOS board can be set up in a CBSE school. Any one of you would like to attempt this, Shobha or Dr. Mihir?
Can I answer?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, now NIOS basically, I'm sure everybody is aware, it has 4 levels, which is A, B, C, which is the open basic education that is run by a body called Pratham. And the D level, which is 10th standard, so that is done, that is even done online. Now the recent development is everything has gone online, and you can actually apply online. Like 10th standard students, you also have the study material, everything is there in place. In case if you want to set it up, there is a institute in Mumbai which is called Pratham. Now Pratham is just a study center, because entire thing is handled by the Pune office, right? And you need to contact Pratham, and Pratham will guide you about what all things are necessary, how do you set up things. But it is very necessary that some of the schools fear that according to the CBSE guidelines, as far as my knowledge goes, you cannot run 2 boards under one roof. So therefore, at times the school are little apprehensive that their registration number might be taken off. So that is the reason some schools who do not have this right information do not run NIOS center under its wing. So maybe if the school is run by some trust or something, so with a different name, they can start that particular NIOS section. And even for further guidance, we can visit the Pune office, and I mean, our experience with there's one gentleman, Mr. Rathod, who sits at Pune office. It has been very nice, where he keeps on guiding teachers and parents about how we can take this process forward in schools also. So this might help.
Okay. Thanks for the
Individually,
education.
also the parents can register. Can I add to that? Individually,
Yeah.
also the parents can register, but that is a more difficult process. To go with the center is better, but individually, also the parents can go online and register the child.
Yes, the parents can individually register. The submissions are little difficult because every now and then, since they have 3 terms, term 1, term 2, and final exam, so there are many submissions asked by the NIOS board. So it is difficult for the parents to actually keep a track of all these submissions, and so it is always better to register with the study center who keeps a track of all this and keeps on guiding the parents. Moreover, if you want to start a study center, NIOS has laid down certain requirements in terms of whether the school has a lab, the school has a library, then what are the subjects that the school is offering. Do this particular school has different experts to teach that particular subjects. If you fit into all those criteria, then the study center you actually get the authority to open your own study center. Because
Okay.
after that they come for an inspection.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's nice. I think so. If we go through a center, it makes more sense because individually it's difficult. Yes, Sonal, Miss Sonal can ask your question. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, Miss Sonal, you can ask your question. Okay, I think it's lost. So there's Andrea who's asking, do you have any? Yes, Sonal.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please ask your question. Yes,
Yeah.
please ask your question.
This is for Dr. Mihir. Yeah, this is for Dr. Mihir here. I am a special educator and preschool teacher, trainer, and everything. I conduct individualized learning systems for children for all ages, like this for special needs as well as normal children. So what I have seen is when the child is born, the child is immediately taken to the pediatric ward, where he is given the APGAR score. I think you all know about the APGAR score.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Dr. Mihir is aware about the APGAR score. The APGAR score is 10 out of 10. They study all the reflexes of the child. And at that time, the pediatrician makes out that the child is perfect. All the reflexes are working in a very proper and a functional state. And from there on, the child is monitored till 2 years of age under a pediatrician, where all the milestones are recorded. These things make it more easier for a parent and a pediatrician to study the initial dysfunctional behavior pattern. Because what I have seen normal parents coming to me and asking me, हम इसको school कब डालें, कौन सी age में डालें? And my main concern is put your child in school at the age of 2.5. Don't put it before 2.5 because that is the time when the child is able to sit at home and the parents can immediately diagnose the problem. This is
What's
why
your
I have
question? What's your question, Sonal?
My
We're not
question
getting.
is, my question is, when you appoint a teacher in a class, so must the teacher be equipped to study the psychological behavior along with the teaching methods together hand in hand? Because I have seen normal teachers just having academic qualification but not well equipped in handling the psychological behavior of the child. So what is Dr. Mee's take on this?
All right. Yes. Now, ideally, if we talk about the D.Ed studies and the B.Ed studies, it does have child psychology and educational psychology as subjects where they talk about how the normal development, how a child should grow. But there is only one chapter which mentions about children with special needs. So I believe that till the time the teacher doesn't get that kind of a particular child in his or her class, that particular knowledge that the teacher has is only British. Now it is the responsibility of the parent to be proactive and study more about the child, equip herself more in terms of thinking out of the box and developing teaching aids for the child to reach to the child. Now here there is another challenge where teaching is somewhere either by choice or it's just put upon. So it depends on the personality of the teacher. Even though in the future, if we have one good book on child psychology or children with special needs, it all depends on the teacher, how passionate the teacher is to understand and teach children. I have come across so many teachers who have actually trained themselves in special needs education, but when it comes to practical teaching, understanding, empathizing the child and knowing the child, unfortunately just fail. So it all depends upon your passion for learning and teaching, and not just the bookish knowledge, I believe. My
Very
opinion.
true. Very true. Very true. I completely agree that it all depends on the teacher and how passionate he or she is. So great. With this, I think we will take one last question, and that is again revolving around myth, and that's why I'm all the more tempted to take that question. It says Mumtaz has asked if a child has difficulty to understand even a very basic question related to academic, then is this child having autism? So this is a fantastic question to break the myth that surrounds autism. So yes, Shobha, I can see you smiling. So would you like to address this? Yeah.
It may not be autism at all. It could just be a hearing problem, or it could be an intellectual disability, or just something which prevents a child from doing something in that particular environment. Why
True.
should we jump to autism at all? We
Yeah.
have to, of course, get a proper assessment done, like Dr. Mihir mentioned earlier. Do the gamut of tests, and then see if autism is probable. Yeah,
True.
everything does
So
not lead to autism. Other disabilities does.
absolutely. So I think it's very important not to jump to labeling the child, and also understand that what exactly is happening, whether things are fine at home. Sometimes there's also the emotional disturbance that the child goes through, which may actually get the child into a shell and make him or her feel isolated. So it's very important for the teacher to observe first before concluding that there is actually some problem, because we all have our days, we all have our blue days. So that doesn't mean we all are suffering with the condition, but yes, we need to have a complete observation done, as Shobha also pointed out about the ABC recording that needs to be done, that how often the behavior happens, whether it is a temper tantrum, or whether it is just attention seeking, or whether it's actually something which is a cause of concern. So we as teachers need to be very, very particular about those kind of observations, because when we are talking to a parent, we need to actually have proof. We cannot just talk about problems arising once in a while. So we need to actually pay a lot of attention to recording of our observations as well. So yeah, thank you for bringing that question, Mumtaz. It is a wonderful question to actually break the myths that surround autism today,
Can
being
I,
World
hello,
Autism
can
Day.
I ask one more question, please?
No, Sonal, 1 minute. There are a few others who are asking, and
Okay,
I think this
no
was the last
problem, no
question that
problem.
we took, because I'm sure our panelists are also waiting to get back
Okay,
to their life. So I'm so sorry. Since you have already asked one question, I would like to give
no problem,
Andrea
no
a
problem.
chance.
Thank you.
So Andrea is asking, is there any online course for occupational therapy, autism, or dyslexia? Which I feel there are many. So Shobha, you yourself, Sopan is running a course in autism. So would you like to brief Andrea about the same?
Sure. We run a 3-month course in autism, which it's only on Saturdays, but it is not an online course, because when you go to a short-term course, the practical side of handling a child with autism is very important, right? And you can do online courses on a particular teaching methodology. For example, if it is Teach or something like that, there are some online courses. But if you want to understand autism and how to teach a child with autism, it has to be a course which is face to face. As of now, that's what I feel. So we run a 3-month course, which the next one will be starting in July, and it's only on Saturdays, so very much open to parents as well as students. And it gives a
Yes.
lot of thought. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the 3 month course is indeed a boon for parents and teachers to understand more about autism. So there are courses for dyslexia as well. You can approach Arividya Mandir group of
MBA.
schools, or MDA for that matter. You can visit the
MBA.
MDA website. They have a lot of short-term courses, MDA, and also a course in.
Maharashtra.
What about a course in occupational therapy? That Zai would be able to answer.
Online course that is
Occupational
we can
therapy course. Is there a course in occupational therapy?
basically it's a degree course basically.
It's a degree.
Post
Yeah,
12th,
it's a degree course.
post 12th, you can opt for a paramedical courses, that is physiotherapy, occupational therapy. It is a 4.5 years course, which includes 6 months compulsory internship available as far as I know.
Okay, okay. So great. Thank you.
Not
And not possible at this moment.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
OT is highly specialized. It's a really
absolutely.
specialized. It's why they call doctors. So
It
you
is.
know,
It is not something that you can do in 3 months' time. So not even 6 months' time.
Raki,
So yes, yes, Dr.
Raki, can you
Mihir.
hear me? Yeah,
Yes, we
my
can hear
only
you.
request is these particular courses. Yeah, these particular courses which are short term will not make you a special educator and
No, it'll
will not
only
make you a
help you.
specialist.
Yes, yes. It'll only help
Yeah, because
to
this
bring
is
about
what
awareness.
happens. Yeah, because these are more of eye-opening courses. Because after 3 months of this course, people feel that I'm an occupational therapist, I'm a special educator, I'm a counselor, and that actually spoils the child's development more because that there's a wrong thing which spreads in the market, and the parent goes and visits that particular professional, and they are professionals with half knowledge. So that is more harm to our children.
our
Absolutely,
course,
but
to add to that, can I add to that? Yeah, our
yeah, sure.
course,
Yes,
my course
please.
is open to parents and to in-service teachers also, the ones who are
Yeah.
already in mainstream education and or special educators who not specialized in autism. So they come, lot of them, I mean, most of our students are like that, who want to just add on their, the aspect of autism.
Yep.
That's how it works.
So the short-term courses are usually meant to bring about awareness and help the in-service teachers also to cope up better and understand children with varied difficulties better. But of course, if we have these kind of specialized courses, then it helps us to it equips the teachers better to handle children with autism or mental retardation or learning disability for that matter. So that's the whole purpose of these short-term courses, is to equip one with knowledge and not to make them a specialist like an occupational therapist is. Yeah, so great. I would like to thank all the panelists, Shobha, Dr. Mihir, Zai, for taking out their valuable time today,
Thank you.
being World Autism Day. Thank you so much for being here and sharing the valuable insights and helping us clear the myths that surround around autism, and also how is it that teachers and parents can create awareness and be more sensitive towards children with autism. So thank you everyone. And with this, we sign off today's session, day 9 of 21-day learning with THT. And we hope to see all the educators tomorrow back again at 3 o'clock with a different topic and a different learning. So thank you, Shobha, thank you, Zai, and thank you, Dr. Mihir. Thank you,
Most
everyone.
welcome. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.